rejoining us here in the Coolin Center studio, where you just finished listening to Bowling Green women's basketball getting their first home win of the year. If you were tuned in here on WBGU 88.1 FM, I'm Holden Ruck from the Falcon Media Sports Network, your host for the Zig Zone, Falcon Media Sports Network, and WBGU 88.1 FM's flagship show, taking you through everything going on in the world of Bowling Green athletics. As I said, I'm Holden Ruck, joined by the two that you would have just heard in the studio had you been tuned in to the women's basketball game, Mr. Artie Abrego and Ben Korak. Gents, how we doing?
They trapped us in here. We're here all day, but I'm feeling pretty good right now.
They took my key card. I can't leave.
Yeah, we can't leave.
They took my car keys.
Holden's locked the door, and we're not allowed to leave for another 3 hours.
You can call in a complaint after the show. We're going to go ahead and get right into the football action for the Falcons, because after a really long wait to close out the season on the gridiron for the Falcons, they were able to get their fourth win of the year in their season finale, taking down the UMass Minutemen by a score of 45-14 on a cold Tuesday night last Tuesday in Amherst. What are your initial thoughts about this game, 45-14?
I really can't tell you. I really can't tell you how little I care. I mean, like it's cool that BG got a win. It's nice to see them win by, a score of 45-14. I think that's the season high in points scored in a game. But it's against a team that's over, and it's a game that's playing you into really nothing. Like all it is really is, you got your seniors a win in the final game of the season, which is nice to do, and it is very nice to get your fourth win. That was, I think, the floor for this team. I think we said before the year started was a 4-win season, which I assume means we're okay with it. So I guess in the first year of Eddie George, it's not the worst thing in the world. But
I think our own Coyle Withrow set his line at 3.5 prior to the season.
Almost got there.
Hit the
it was
over
pretty close. Yeah.
And granted, they should have been well over, but that's discussion that we've had so many times before. Did we really get too invested in this? It was nice to see players do well. It was nice to see Bowling Green score some points.
I was semi-nervous just because of the way things had been going. That I was like, okay, this would be either the worst thing to ever happen if it were to happen. But, I mean, it was what we all expected. It was an 0-11 team heading into face BG, and they exited 0-12. So it's not really much of a surprise if you look at just how poorly UMass has performed all season.
I think more of my brain power went into how sad it is for an 0 for UMass team that even the second worst MAC team by record just walloped you.
Yeah, I mean,
bad. 45-14 to the second worst MAC team.
That's a big disparity between talent and points and everything.
And it's a team that played close games this year too. You look back at their game against Buffalo. I'm pretty sure that's the one where they went to overtime. They only lost by a touchdown. That was really they're one of only 2 close results for them all year. They also lost 26-27 to Bryant. So again, just a very as bad of a team as you can get in an average year. I think morally, or going into the offseason, nice for the Falcons, carry some momentum, send the seniors out with a win. But yeah, I mean, 0-12. Bowling Green scoring 45 when their previous season high was 28.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty impressively bad stuff from
UMass. And for UMass as well, I mean, a team for Bowling Green that we have mentioned so many times how bad the offense has been. They allowed 3 receiving touchdowns to the Falcons, or 3 passing touchdowns, I should say. The only other time the Falcons had did that was against Toledo in a miracle game for the Falcons. Every other game has been 1 or 0. So you've allowed something that has been done once in 12 games during the regular season. I mean, just it was bad. UMass is not a good team, and they didn't play well, and it all combined for the win on the final game of the season for Bowling Green. So, I guess credit to Eddie George for getting to 4 wins. He was able to do it. We were kind of nervous about this game after Eastern and Akron.
I think the funniest thing to me...
I think it was just fear. Just what if this could possibly happen?
So, right at the cusp of the midway point of the season for the Falcons, you beat your rival Toledo in an incredibly improbable... Oh, that was fun. An incredibly improbable comeback, 28-23, 28 answered. Then you go 27-6 loss to Central Michigan, 24-21 loss at Kent, 28-3 loss to Buffalo at home, 27-21 loss to Eastern Michigan, 19-16 loss to Akron. You lose 5 straight to go into the second half of the season, and then dropping 45. That's funny in and of itself. Just for a team that struggled that badly. I mean, I can't do the math off the top of my head.
You scored as many points in that game as you did against Kent State, Buffalo, and Eastern combined.
Yeah.
I just did do the math in my head.
Wow, what a nerd. He did math.
I know, right? No, not math guy.
This
Been
guy
correct
does
as
math.
math.
No, not math guy.
Yeah. I mean, you scored the same amount of points in Toledo and Ohio games combined. Which are
It's
two good
funny
opponents,
to me,
so
though.
that's reasonable, but not 3 games in a row against, at the time, the second worst team in the MAC, Buffalo, who's fine, but I called them a fraud from the beginning in MAC football, and Eastern, who was the 3rd worst team in the MAC when you played them.
For a team that was contending as, like, Bowling Green, not the worst, but, one of the worst, in the bottom 25 easily. If you do the top 25, you do the bottom 25, like, one of the worst teams in the country by record.
I think they are in the bottom 25.
Yeah.
That, like, ranking system.
But it just tells you, like, the levels to this. When you look at the opening line was Bowling Green minus 15.5. 15.5. That's crazy to me. Like, you've got a winless team. So, I mean, it makes sense. A team doesn't go winless for no reason. And obviously we saw, they well exceeded the overhits there. It's still just kind of comical to me. And it's unfortunate that that's how we're, closing out our discussion of this football season is, just laughing a little bit. But
yeah, ranked by CBS the 18th worst team in college football.
I mean, with football, people always bring up the Toledo game, like, how could they fall off after that? I mean, if you look at the Toledo game, I feel like it's more a case of Toledo completely falling apart in all areas in the second half than BG, like, being like a really powerful because they were doing the same things on offense that they were really doing all year besides that one RJ Garcia touchdown pass to Petaway. I mean, it was also the defense, but I mean, just after that, it was just like I feel like you saw what their peak was as a team after that game.
It opens a really compelling conversation about ability to compete in the MAC. And as much as we can chalk up this UMass game, look at Bowling Green, winning it dramatically and say, okay, well, they won 4 games this season. Let's see what happens next. Like, there's still a lot, I think, to tell about the future for this program under this leadership, looking around the MAC. To close out the season now, Western Michigan and Miami is meeting them in the MAC championship. Is that right?
Yeah, I will say, though, for that Toledo game, maybe you didn't deserve... maybe Toledo handed it to you in a way, or handed you opportunity. You did take the opportunity and you ran with it.
I can agree with that.
I think it's something that they were given opportunity in Central Michigan, Kent State, Buffalo, Eastern, Akron, and they didn't take it, and they didn't score.
Well, I mean, part of that was just...
part of that's because quarterbacks were injured and the situation was different, and the team had a different look after the Toledo game, or after Central Michigan game, I guess you could argue. But I do also think that... we had rivalry weekend this last weekend. Coming off a rivalry weekend, that half of football took Toledo out of the MAC championship.
Yeah.
Because if they had won, they would be 7-1, and they'd be tied with Western Michigan. They'd be in the MAC championship. So Bowling Green, one half of good football, and the back 7 games of the year, whatever, did take Toledo out of the MAC championship. And at least that's something I guess you can hang your hat on, is that your rival now missed out on the chance at another MAC championship because of you.
I think there's always a bit of sweetness in playing spoiler, but I really look at Toledo at, Jason Candle, for whatever reasons, a lot of wins, genuinely, and a MAC title, one of the more respected coaches in the MAC, and his program still sometimes struggles to make that MAC championship like they did this year. You take a loss to Bowling Green that you can't afford to lose, because in their MAC opener, they lost to Western Michigan, who's now going to be playing for a title, which, we can lament the Broncos playing for another title in another sport on a different day.
I'm just not even going to mention it. They did only lose by 1, though.
Yeah.
But even so, you're competing in a conference, you're a 4-win team for Bowling Green going into next year, fine. But you're competing in a conference where the best teams still screw up regularly and badly. And I don't...
Yeah.
You have to wonder, roster holes, quarterback especially, you have to wonder in a lot of ways what direction, the team's going to be able to go next year. How can you build on, 4 wins? A recruiting class, a full offseason helps that. Obviously, you can't just change everything overnight. But
yeah, we're to the point now that just the way that they played the back half of the season removes all questions you had about, bringing in Drew Pine as your guy, or what the quarterback situation is, or who you brought. Like Eddie George's first season with personnel, because it really didn't matter what personnel. Maybe a different guy might have got you 2 more wins, and you might have been in a bowl game that you probably would have lost anyway. Yeah, I just it's all forward looking after the Buffalo loss to me. That was the last chance you really had, and after that, did any game really matter? Well,
I mean,
would
just
say
for
Kent
pride,
State.
I would say, yeah.
As soon as you lost to Kent State, did any game really matter?
No, I mean,
once
you reached the point where
you had the
win
lead at half,
maybe
and then
you
you
would have
fell
lucked out
off,
into a bad opponent in the bowl game, but I mean,
when you got to the point where you had to win out to make a bowl game, it's like
Yeah.
we kind of expected to be somewhere better than that.
And
at that
especially
point.
with the quarterback turnover and the one-dimensional offense, it was looking bleak from the start, especially after the Kent State game, specifically after you had to start Hunter Nazem, who like nobody thought would even play or even touch the field this season, and now he's your number one guy at quarterback for the rest of the year.
I mean, you played to a point where we were nervous about playing a 1 MAC win Eastern team and a 2 MAC win or 3 MAC win Akron team. And that was just like, dang, I don't know if we could do it. And you didn't do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think like the biggest takeaway to me available from the rest of the results, looking at how the MAC shook out Western and Miami making the championship, Toledo falling just short. Ohio, the reigning MAC champion, who, mind you, won by a pretty convincing margin last year as well. Teams like Toledo and Ohio missing it. You don't have to be, the established powers in the MAC slip up constantly and miss the game constantly. Toledo, Ohio, 2 of the better programs of late, and can't hack it. So like you've got a chance in any given year, even as one of the worst teams in the conference. Finishing 11th is not, I don't think, what a lot of people might have expected, or certainly not what most people hoped in Bowling Green for that team. But I mean, I don't think 4 wins is saying like, okay, you can't still compete next year. I think that's kind of the beauty of the MAC, beauty of a lot of mid-majors is you really step into it. There's just so many variables, and the teams are so erratic and find such fascinating ways to lose that kind of feels wide open.
I mean, it does feel like an even playing field somewhat with a lot of teams. With Bowling Green, I mean, 4-8 record to end the year. I'm not too nervous about it. Obviously that's never what you want to finish a record with, but I mean, first year head coach here. I mean, I guess like maybe our expectations were a little too high, considering who was coaching at Eddie George, and like he's kind of like a legend in Ohio. So I think a lot of people had like huge expectations for what was going to happen like right away, and I think that's for a lot of things. Just you expect something like when someone gets hired, and then like it doesn't always go the way you want it. But like at the same time, it's like there's still like flashes of like really good stuff from a lot of the players, like Dendy and like a couple other guys. So it's just a matter of can you keep them here for next year? And hopefully compete more in the MAC head into next season.
I don't even know if it's expectations were too high. It's just the expectations were set high. By you being 3-3 with 1-1 in conference play through your toughest 2 conference opponents. And even after the season ended, those are your toughest 2 conference opponents because Buffalo didn't do anything, and Central Michigan really didn't do much. I mean, Buffalo finished 4-3. Central Michigan finished 5-3. They did okay. But it's not like they were fantastic. And before that, you had played relatively close with Ohio. I mean, it was closer than 35-20 tells you.
Yeah.
Then you beat Toledo. Whether or not you think you should have, you still did. And if you can do it there, why not be able to do that? Maybe in a MAC championship or be in contention for a MAC championship. I mean, like you played up and then you just fell down a cliff.
And I feel like what you said is really important about it being the 2 best conference teams that you played, convincingly early. If that team was able to beat Toledo, they should have had, they had a chance arguably, but they should have had a chance and competed closer with every team on the rest of the schedule. Toledo on paper, pound for pound, you look at, every position on their roster. I mean, that's as good of a team as basically any roster in the MAC for the most part. I don't think that's any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's not.
No,
you can't beat Toledo and then come out and be outscored 55-9 to Central Michigan and Buffalo.
Yeah,
who were arguably not even competing.
I mean, the Central Michigan game was very telling. I feel like just in terms of like how just truly. I mean, we'd seen it like in other weeks, and it's like how truly like one-dimensional the offense was. And all day and like just anything. Everything. They didn't do anything with anything.
Central,
2 field goals.
Ironically, Central ended up being, on the better end of the team in the MAC, one of the only 5 teams in the MAC to finish above 500 overall and above 500 with their conference record. 5-3 conference, 7-5 overall. So like, this isn't to say that Central Michigan's a bad team, but that's not, Toledo or Ohio. And I mean, you let them dog walk you, and you let Buffalo dog walk you.
Yeah. Yeah, Central was pretty much the epitome of like not good enough to be. Yeah. They weren't good enough to be one of the top teams, but better than like all the mid-tier teams, because they lost to both Toledo and Western Michigan, but then also took a loss to Akron, which took them out of contention, and then they pretty much just spanked on everybody else. I mean, they played Eastern, Bowling Green, UMass, and Kent State, who are all the bottom 4 teams. And then their only real difficult games were Western Michigan, who they lost, Toledo, who they lost, Akron's mildly difficult game, I guess, but you lost by a score, and then Buffalo, they won by quite a margin against Buffalo, who finished just below them. So I guess Central's a fine opponent. It's just, we said before the season, Toledo and Ohio were going to be the 2 games. And you did kind of what we called for, and you split them, and then you just didn't, you set yourself up well and then just couldn't hit the ball after that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and another interesting wrinkle about the MAC and hashing out who makes the championship game is, the fact that you're playing 8 conference game with, going into next year, it'll be back to 12 teams, that you don't see everybody. That matters way more than it feels like it should. But I mean, you can go through the season and, if you just dodge, oh, we don't have Miami and Ohio on the schedule this year. Like, you might be in pretty good shape to make the, you might have one hard game that you can afford to lose if you win the rest of them. You could have one tough opponent, go 7-1, lose to Toledo or something, and find yourself in Detroit. And
yeah, I mean, they lucked out with their schedule, I'd say.
Yeah.
And you didn't play Western and Miami, and those are the 2 teams in the conference championship game. And I would argue, because you played both of them last year, you didn't play either of them this year. You see at least one of them next year. And while granted Western wasn't that great last year and real good this year, they could go back down, but they're still the defending champions. And you're definitely going to see Toledo again. So that's at least 2 good teams that you're going to play, and you're probably going to see either Ohio and another team of Miami and Western again, because you didn't play them this year. So schedule's only going to get more difficult, and you're going to have to reset your entire roster pretty much, aside from the running backs, who are seemingly pretty youthful. And if I was a running back, I'd want to stay with a Heisman and almost Hall of Fame, NFL
coach.
Hall of Famer running back coach.
Yeah.
So,
multiple things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, too many things to name on the show. We only have a certain amount of time, but I'd want to stay with Eddie George.
Yeah.
So that's the only position group that I feel fine. Like everybody else, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a mass exodus of everybody else on the team, besides the running backs. That's really the only position group that I feel like can be confident going into next year. Maybe offensive line as well.
I mean,
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, the offensive line to me, it felt a little off all season. I mean, just you expect them to a pretty high end position group. They were the most experienced people on the team. It felt like they really struggled a lot this season against pass rush, run. I mean, the run blocking for the most part was pretty good. I mean, with guys like Denny, but in terms of just pass rush, it was pretty bad. Defending the pass rush was pretty middle ground in my opinion. Just from watching them all year, which maybe that was partially because you had a lot of new quarterbacks coming in and out. You had to adapt to different types of offensive game plans based on the quarterbacks. Lucian's more of a runner. Nazem was pretty inexperienced. Baramay hadn't started much. Drew Pine spends so much time in the pocket, waiting to make his throw. So I mean, maybe that's all multiple things, and maybe that's not completely on them.
They seemingly did do well run blocking consistently throughout the year.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of the reason the running game was, so fluorescent at times is that the blocking was just so good in front of them. They had holes all the time. Dendy is not, making 25-yard runs just because he's Barry Sanders and spinning out.
Right,
he's real good, but he's still got holes.
Could be.
You never know.
And he could be. You never know. I mean, it is.
He looked great towards the end. I mean, he was probably the best player on the team towards the end of the year. Those last 3 games.
I think that's a pretty easy. Yeah.
I mean, there's not much else.
How many games did they play where the best player on offense wasn't the running back?
How many games did they play where the best player period wasn't Jackson Cleather?
You make a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is that crazy?
You make a solid point.
He is probably the most consistent player on the team.
Are Cleather and Henderson the best 2 players on the team? Probably.
I don't know about Henderson.
I really liked Henderson.
I think they.
I thought Henderson was
the best unit.
Henderson could be a little inconsistent. I would say Cleather's the best.
Cleather's the best player on the team.
Does Cleather have eligibility left? I don't know that off the top of my head.
I don't think so. I think he celebrated senior day.
He had didn't he have a season-ending injury?
I don't know. You can play. You can play 8 seasons now. I mean, I don't know.
He's a junior.
Jackson Cleather's a junior.
It says on his athletics website. So maybe, yeah.
No reason for a kicker to transfer either. He'd probably get more kicks if he stayed. So at least we'll know we'll have a 45-yard field goal in the bag next year.
Now, when
Is
we're
that your
talking
thing?
about the logistics and potential of a kicker hitting the transfer portal, we might have jumped the shark a little bit. So I'm prepared to wrap this one up. Anything else you boys have to add on this topic?
That's such a fair point.
Yeah.
No, just
We can start calculating that right now.
Yeah, just interested to see where transfers go and,
Yeah.
and who quarterback's going to be next year. Because honestly, I don't. It's not going to be Drew Pine. I don't
No,
know how
I
much you
agree.
trust Baron May or Hunter Najim.
I think Baron May is like,
Lucian, you could, but
yeah.
he's not going to get a red shirt this year, so he's going to be on the older side by the time he comes back next year. And I don't know.
I think the MAC.
Who knows? It's interesting. This will be the most interesting offseason, I think, in a while.
I think
to see what he's going to do.
I think Baron May is out of eligibility. I
Is
want to
he?
say.
Baron May's out of eligibility.
Yeah, I think
He was already
so.
a fifth-year guy.
Yeah.
You never know, guys.
Plus the injury, so
Come
yeah.
on.
You never know. You
You
get
never
a
know.
waiver. If he's a fifth-year guy, then one of those years.
Santa
one of those
Claus
years,
will bring him a 7th year in his.
One of those
under
years
his-
could
in
be
his
an injury.
stocking.
So let's hope that Diego Pavia lawsuit or whatever get Baron May another year, and then we'll see what we're talking about. No,
We're hoping for Baron May back.
Yes.
This is kind of the fun part, like maybe the more fun part of the year, whether your team's winning or losing, because when you've got the results on the board, you're talking about what happened. You can be predictive, but it's the MAC.
Given the last
it's
six-
such a toss up.
Given the last 6 games of the year, this is the more fun part.
That's what I'm saying.
bowling
I'm
in
really
football.
looking forward to. I know we've got other seasons going on. We're going to be talking about a ton of basketball. Hockey's going to get into really really high gear. Replaying the better opponents. But like random off-season news is going to be electric. Like,
Yeah.
okay, are we getting a good transfer quarterback? Is everybody
Sure.
leaving? Jackson Cleaver, are you staying?
Please
the
stay.
whole 9 yards. And
Please.
I'm really looking forward to being able to mix that in as we go.
Yeah.
With this show, because it's always like.
I mean,
It's always exciting, and
it's always a madhouse though with transfers. Like it's always like 100
Yeah.
per minute, and like 5 people transfer the same day.
Yeah, it's
We'll see if
always
Eddie
a
George
mess.
does his best Todd Simon impression. Getting in the portal.
Only like 30% of college football now is actually what happens on the field.
Yeah.
Let's be so honest. It's all about, almost everything. Like there's as much to talk about, if not more, in the offseason than there is.
Yeah, it's kind of my
During the
point. Yeah,
season.
I mean, there's full websites
So-
just dedicated to just talking about the
I mean, the
transfer portal.
speculation
Yeah.
in the offseason especially is like on who's going to land where,
it's the
who's going to be
Fosters
good.
of the world.
Yeah, Foster Ross size
Foster.
of the world.
If only we
Shout
had
out
a
Foster.
million Foster Ross ties
Shout
to
out
track
Foster
all
Ross.
that. Yeah, shout out
Watching
Foster.
low-level college basketball on a Saturday morning when college football is going on.
Legend.
W guy.
Goat.
That's the guy you want on your
We're
squad.
gonna move on to the next sport.
We
I
should
think.
move
I think
on.
we should move
Yeah,
on.
we didn't talk about
As always, with any off-season coverage, as the Falcons have wrapped up the football season, you can check out bgfalconmedia.com, where we'll have written pieces regarding anything exciting going on with coaching staff, transfer portal, roster, you name it. So, as always, keep tuned for that. We're going to go ahead and close this, last 20 minutes or so. I want to circle back on the stretch, while it's fresh for you two, that the women's basketball team has been on. Really big time, getting their first home win of the year, 56-53 against Purdue Fort Wayne. But they also played... we talked about the Alaska games already.
Yeah, we did.
Purdue
Yeah,
Fort
we-
Wayne. Talk about that a little bit. You guys were in here in the studio for that one. I know anybody
Yeah.
who's been tuned in since that already got to hear a little bit about it. But what stuck out to you? The big story of the day for me is Janae Donahue is nails. I mean, she's money.
Who's been on this? Who's been on this the whole time? Ben Korak's been
I do
on this
believe
the whole
Ben
time.
Korak.
Yeah,
Since
you've
day
been
one
pushing
watching-
this pretty heavily. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
pull the clip.
Insert a clip right here. Yeah,
I'm
cut
going to
away.
go back and find it. There's a Zig Zone last year where in the same Zig Zone, I said I love Janae Donahue and I said I love Javante Campbell. And I would argue that both of them are the best players on their respective teams.
Oh, they are. Like you
I
can. I don't even think you.
I mean,
I don't
there's
think you can make an argument
for
that they're
women's
not.
basketball
Yeah.
for Paige Kohler because more of an offensive output.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't think
Different
there's an argument
players,
for
but
men's.
No.
And I love the way Nate Donahue plays so much. And I think the team kind of played much like her today, that so many, it was a tough game, not a great game in parts, but it was a team effort to climb back in. It wasn't just like Paige Kohler and Janae Donahue willing the Falcons to a win today. It seemed like everybody was contributing. Taya Ellis did, Jasmine Farron did, Emily Cecil, she's kind of been pretty good spark plug. She didn't score today, but I like the way she played, especially away from the ball. She earns her way onto the court. I don't know, Artie. I think this is a pretty good estimation today on what a MAC opponent might look like, and I think a pretty good output as well.
I agree. I mean, like I mentioned, like you just mentioned, everyone contributed. I mean, 12 steals as a team. Obviously, Donahue led the way with 6, but Ellis had 3 as well. I mean, Ty Ellis had a really solid game too. I mean, 6 points, 9 rebounds, 3 steals. and just a really solid defensive game. I mean, I feel like shooting is more like where we're concerned with the team right now. I mean, they shot 35% from the field. Still really rough from three. They went 6 for 29, so that's 20.7%. But at the same time, they had a really bad second quarter. They managed to put together a really solid second half. So there's still a lot of potential here. And like there's a lot of fight in this team. There's like, they had a bad quarter. They came back out in the second half with a lot of fight, and they really performed well down the stretch to pick up the win.
The only thing I will say is, as I see as a pretty major hole, is size. I mean, Taya Ellis having to be kind of moved over to center, already a forward, and center forward guard is a little bit fuzzy in the way basketball is played now and with the way teams are set up. She's 6'1", so she's not undersized, I guess. She's above 6 foot. It would be really nice to get somebody really activated as another big Kendall Moxie or Jaden Cook or something. I know Jaden Cook had a bad miss up toward the end of the game that very easily could have cost him. But she's 6'3" and pretty large and can move her feet well. So maybe the closest thing to Erica Porter that you had last year.
She had 5 rebounds today, Cook. So I mean,
she did, yeah. And it's just the offense, I think.
Yeah.
And she's valuable when she's on the floor. It's just some other things. So I think that's the biggest hole is big presence. Which might hurt them a bit in the MAC, but they're not playing, Big Ten opponents all the time where every player on the team is 5'9" or above. You're playing teams that may only have 1, 2, 6-footers that play at any given time. So not a huge deal. It's just where I see the biggest flaw, at least right now.
Yeah, take me through your perspective in as many ways as you can think about it on the 5-point quarter in the second. That was just a case of them. They couldn't hit their shots. They do this often. They did this often in the first quarter and then in the second quarter. They spend a lot of time on offense looking around, and the shot clock really winds down, and they have to go with kind of like their last available look to go for the shot. And they did that a lot today in the first half. Not as much in the third and fourth, if I could be wrong about that, but it was just, I think it was one of those. They have really struggled in like finding like opening looks in those like opening minutes of halves and quarters, and they like really let the time wind down. So I feel it was a case of that and just not just hitting your shots consistently.
It feels like that might be a byproduct of just not shooting well early in the season.
Yeah,
and maybe just not being a well shooting team, but maybe having to be a little bit more selective with the shots you take and not wanting to just jack them up and hope that they fall. Because it's not like hockey where you can put a shot on net and it might find its way through.
Yeah.
Like if you're just throwing up shots, they're just not going to fall, and then you're going to go over the day. So I think it could be a decent amount of that. They just, Paige Kohler might be a little bit slow on the offensive output, but she can still put up some pretty nice shots. 5 for 17 from the field today, 3 for 12 from three. 3-point is a big problem, I'd say.
Yes.
I mean, they're finding looks. They're finding open looks. They're just not hitting them, so that's different. But you are right. They are taking a lot of time in the offensive zone, and it doesn't feel like they're taking useful time. They're
just looking. They're looking, yeah.
Not getting anything open. And
I mean, you want to be decisive in those moments. You want to, you don't want to have to score too quickly, but you want to get it on the board as fast as you can, so you don't really wind on that shot clock and like take those bad shots or penalties. So you just fouls. So you just really got to like keep moving. You can't like spend so much time looking that you don't do anything at all.
And I mean, how much do either of you trust this team to right that ship? Because I mean, you squeaked out. And I mean, I say squeaked out 56-53. That's a pretty close win over Purdue Fort Wayne. And there are several teams in the MAC that are going to be giving you a tougher challenge.
It was 54-53 until a final bucket or free throws made. So
that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's going to be plenty of teams in the MAC, especially if you're going to try to contend. You've been to the tournament now twice under Fred Schmiel, haven't gotten a win yet. You want to hope to contend. You want to hope to not regress. You're going to have to right the ship significantly in the efficiency.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the better teams in the MAC, the teams that you're going to contend with for a championship, if you get to the tournament, you're not going to be able to get away with a quarter like that.
I mean, you've still got a lot of time. Like you got a couple more days, like a couple. I mean, not like a ton of time, but time enough to try to fix it.
Isn't a lot.
Yeah,
there's some time.
But if this is still going on by MAC play or like close to MAC play, like a couple days away, I'm going to be very concerned.
And the good thing now is, you have much easier opponents coming up. Kentucky State, Defiance, Lords, Lemoyne before you get into MAC play. So 4 more games in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, something like that. So a lot of practice time, a lot of homework because 4 straight games at home before you start the MAC season at home. So you're not going anywhere. Your practices can get more consistent. I do think Holden's knocking on a good idea there that there might not be a team identity yet. And maybe because a couple of big aspects they've struggled in this season is big play and 3-point shooting, which is a common theme and identities for a lot of teams. But they have time to figure it out. I trust that Frenchmeal will be able to. We haven't mentioned enough how big of a turnover there was from last year, considering you lost Amy Velasco to graduation. You lost Lexi Fleming to the transfer portal and spending her last years at Bowling Green. It was time for her to move on. And you lost Erica Porter as well.
Yeah.
So that's 3 huge pieces. And while Paige Kohler is great and played well with Lexi and Amy, I mean, you can't put the entire team on her and Janae Donahue.
It feels like they're still looking for that third person besides, Kohler and Donahue to really step up and be that player that really helps them out. So I mean, I think that's a part of team identity as well, just discovering who your best people are besides your best 2 players.
If you are able to find one.
Yeah.
Some teams are, two people teams. Unfortunately, you just can't find that third option, which they kind of need to do because there's only so much, as much of the GOAT as Janae Donahue is, and as great as Paige Kohler is, there's only so much you can do with 2 people.
I mean, you don't want to have Kohler just taking 17 shots a game consistently. No. I agree with you, Ben.
You don't want her to need to.
Yeah.
I mean, 27 of your 61 shots were Kohler and Donahue, and 10 of your 21 makes. So half of your made shots were Kohler and Donahue. So, and while that's not necessarily a bad thing, I mean, your highest scorer off the bench is Lauren Gherkin with 8, and 6 of those were on 2 shots and 3-point chances. So,
yeah, I mean,
certainly things to work on.
I mean, I'm just
kind of
scanning box scores, looking at the shooting percentages or the shooting, the makes misses. 18 for 49 against Purdue Fort Wayne, 23 out of 64 against Alaska Anchorage. You see Irvine, you shoot 14 out of 58, 18 out of 49. Oh, I already said that one. That was Purdue Fort Wayne. Against Louisiana, 27 out of 52. That was by far one of their better, shooting performances in that 82-67 win in that MAC Sunbelt Challenge game. They shoot 26 for 65 against Wisconsin. Not bad because it's, a good opponent. Marquette, you shoot 19 for 60. I mean, they've got I feel like a game and a half of good shooting, to be honest. And even though, you've got Kentucky State, Defiance, Lourdes, Lemoyne, 3 of those 4 should not be super difficult.
I mean, what would you regard as a good shooting percentage? For a good, not
for this team or just in general?
No, just in general for a college women's basketball team. I'll look up number 1 in NCAA. Number 1 is 55% for LSU. So if you go down to 50, number 50 is 46%. So that would probably be.
I would say near 45%.
45%.
If you're going to be a tournament team, I think so. Yeah.
For a MAC team, that's a little bit different. Just you should be about the same.
Yeah. But I mean,
45%. MAC team around 40
for
probably.
60. I mean, that's under a third.
I mean, they're shooting 34% of the season, so you have 11-point percentage to make up. Just to get to an acceptable.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm not saying they need to shoot 50%. They had one game where they shot over 50%. They won convincingly. That was a great game. But when you're if you're missing 2 out of every 3 shots you take, that's not good enough for a tournament.
Or you got to be taking 500 shots. You got to at least be putting them up. Just go full, volume over quality and just put them up. And really just wait for them to fall.
And that's going to be a problem, too, because, in areas where you're outmatched by size, you're kind of going to get beat up in the paint. And, I mean, I think that kind of gives way to, efficient teams that can play well in the paint are going to kind of dominate you.
BG had a 45% field goal percentage last year. That was 3rd in the MAC. So pretty high. Average of the MAC was about 43%. And the lowest in the MAC was 37% for Ohio, and you're at 34 currently.
Well, I mean, how much do you think of that too? Is
opponents definitely play a factor in that.
Yeah,
opponents, and I mean, players that were here that aren't. I'm not
Fleming,
saying
Velasco.
I'm not
Oh,
saying
yeah.
I'm not
Oh,
saying they don't
100%,
have the
yeah.
athletes at all, this year to figure it out. But I mean, they, Amy
You lost
Velasco,
big
Lexi
pieces.
Fleming, Erica Porter,
Yeah.
those are pretty big pieces.
I mean,
those are big shoes to fill.
You could rely on them consistently too, and that was like you're kind of like figuring out who you can.
Well, yeah. If it wasn't
rely on
Amy
now,
Velasco's day, you still had Paige and Lexi Fleming.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't Lexi Fleming's day, you still had Paige and Amy Velasco.
There's like you had
And
multiple people that could step
even
up.
if all three guards didn't have good days, you still had Erica Porter.
I mean, yeah, you there were a couple days where Paige would lead the team in points, have a bunch of shots, maybe even like a couple fouls, and it's like, okay, it's fine. We've got like more efficient performances from Lexi and Amy, still getting it done a little more efficiently. Or it could go the other way, if one of them was having a cold day. You just don't have that leeway right now. And I think this is all a really roundabout way of us restating what I think Ben already said or maybe already said it, but like they kind of need a third option. They kind of need somebody else to step up pretty badly, I think.
Yeah, between Velasco, Kohler, Fleming, and Porter, it was over 1,300 of 1,700 total shots attempted last year.
Man.
And you're returning 357, which is Paige. So you lost. I mean, what's the math for that? 900. You lost 900 total shots from last year to this year.
It's a lot.
And your next highest shot taking returner was 162 by Jenna Donahue, who made him at a pretty high percentage, but 162, and she was the only other one with over 100 shots. So you're trying to find offense from two people that had somebody that took a lot of shots, somebody that took a pretty low amount of shots, and everybody else took less than 100.
Well, and here's the interesting thing. I think there's a little bit of pressure to figure it out because I know that you're losing people to the portal, and I know that you're losing people to graduation. Amy Velasco, Lexi Fleming, Erica Porter, we've already mentioned their names. But, you've got players with continuity, and, I mean, that's why you find players in the portal, and that's why you recruit, and it's why you develop. I mean, you didn't lose the whole team. You lost 3 starters. That's significant.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
And this
good
is
teams and teams that are still in that tournament bubble, in that competing for a title potentially conversation, teams that have that standard, you got to figure out a way.
Yeah. I mean, I know because we just called for the team and I looked at the roster and everything. Could you tell me a freshman on the Bowling Green women's basketball team? Not to call you out, but I don't think a lot of people can.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Because I believe the only one on the team is Kyra Miller, who really has not been too much of an influential piece. And I believe she's
played
the only
3
freshman.
minutes today.
Yeah, she's the only freshman on the team, I believe.
I mean, that's... And it's not even a discredit to her, and it's not like a discredit to the team or recruiting or any of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, to hear that player's name without listening intently for the PA announcer at the Stro, you have to look at the box score.
Yeah, pretty much.
To the casual fan, you have no idea who that is.
And her time has decreased, like, evidently, as opponents have got easier. Like Louisiana and South Carolina, and Wisconsin and Marquette, she had over 20 minutes, 15 against UC Irvine, 10 against Alaska Anchorage, 3 today. So even she's dwindling down, and maybe she'll get back up. And even if she turns into an influential player, you only have one. Like, what are you looking for next year? I mean, God forbid Paige Kohler enters the portal.
Yeah.
Or Jenna Donahue
enters
the portal. Or both.
I mean,
and you have...
I think if you're Fred Schmiel, you're hoping and looking to one of your other upperclassmen to, step up in some way. I mean, you have to hope, but I don't see it happening on the bottom end right now.
Because both men's and women's basketball and NCAA definitely relying on the transfer portal. And your team cannot win unless you successfully function in the transfer portal.
Or you maintain complete continuity, which they're not doing.
Yeah, which they're not doing.
Nobody but like two programs.
But also,
in the country
even like just because I'm a fan and I know Tom Izzo for Michigan State men's basketball doesn't use the portal too much, but he uses it some, and his freshman classes are great, and he develops well. But the women's basketball team doesn't have any real high quality transfers. And hasn't brought in any freshmen yet.
And do you know what
unless Fred Schmiel is really nailing down some names for this offseason and really trying to go out and get some good recruits, next year doesn't look too hot.
I mean,
and you're not even a MAC play this year.
We're not
yet.
to MAC play yet. So, we are being very speculative.
Oh, yeah.
But another angle, too. You might just be looking to, you can't expect them to do everything themselves, but to compete this year, you might need like another pretty substantial step forward from one of Donahue or Kohler, who, I think already great players. Donahue especially is clearly showing like, yeah, she means business. She's played phenomenally this year, played phenomenally today.
Yeah.
Paige Kohler proved that she can be that number one option at times last year when she needed to. I don't think there's doubts about her abilities on this team as a leader and as a player on the court. But I think this team is in the position where unless some other third player is, one of your seniors or juniors is stepping up, one of those players needs to take another step forward. And I don't know that there's like, within this roster, within the way they play, I don't know that there's that much room for either of them to like elevate their game because they're playing well. But you know what I mean? It feels like I think everybody could play better. I'm not saying they've capped out their potential by any means, Janae Donahue and Paige Kohler. But I am saying like they are far closer to playing at their ceilings than the rest of the roster is, and like it's really top heavy in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're relying on them heavily for everything at this point in the season because they are your two best players, and I think we mentioned a couple times we don't really know who like. Ty Ellis, he showed a little bit of flash today, but like we're still figuring out who like the rest of the people can be or the players can be.
Yeah, and you don't need a player that's really going to come out and play the game the right way because you already have two or even more than that do. You just need somebody that can go out and score, like flat out score. You just need a scorer.
It kind of feels
because if you get somebody to put up 10 or 15 and no other stats, you're at least a pretty solid step closer to next year. And that makes me feel a lot better about how the offense is played.
It kind of feels like watching one of the, with no disrespect to the women's basketball team, it feels a little bit like watching one of the lower finishing NBA teams in a given year.
Yeah.
You've got like star power. Basically every roster has at least like one guy who's like, yeah, this is the guy. But if they kind of have an off day, that's it. That's curtains.
Or again, God forbid, get injured.
Yeah.
God forbid.
They, that team's been, last year, obviously it's early this year, but, if they had, imagine this team this year or last year, if they had the injury woes that the men's team did.
Oh my gosh.
I
Devastating.
That would be the worst thing in the possible world that could happen.
Say that. But it devastated the men's team last year. That was poised to finish pretty high. Or I thought at least had talent to finish pretty high.
They had a ton of talent, just like you said.
And even if
decimated
they
by
play
injuries.
their hearts out and they play to the literal best they can, if you lose talent, you lose talent. There's really not too much you can do. That goes for any sport.
Also, like with injuries, you have to play more people, like more minutes consistently, and like your players will get worn down and worn down and worn down to the end of the year until they have like nothing left and they're just playing on fumes essentially.
You don't want Janae Donahue to be playing with two broken hands like Javonte Campbell did.
No, you don't.
I'd be interested to see how that. I think she could pull it off.
She might be able to pull it off, but you don't want that to happen.
No.
You don't want anybody to have to go through that, and you don't want the team to have to deal with that, and it's something you can't control. So,
all that being said, December 3rd, they'll host Kentucky State. Defiance after that, December 7th. December 14th, they'll host Lourdes College. December 16th, Lemoyne visits the Stroh. And then they'll open MAC play December 20th, 5 days before Christmas, against Kent State. Nice homestand here, and you just started it off with a win against Purdue Fort Wayne to get your first home win of the year. I think there's a great time for the team to build up some confidence and build some momentum for MAC play. But if we see shooting performances on par of like the average that they've been doing, like more of those around that 33%, even if they do win, I'm going to have some concerns looking into that Kent game.
Yeah,
that's my big takeaway.
I just question how many wins you're going to be able to take in Mid-American Conference play with 32%. Because you're going to have to be taking so many more shots and have so many more possessions. It's just not feasible that it can happen. You have to get it up to at least above 40. I'd say to be a team that's in the MAC tournament, I'd say you have to get to above 40%.
Right.
And from where they sit right now, that's what, a 6-point improvement, 6% improvement. So that's sizable. It's a lot.
Ben Korak getting the math done today.
I know, right? Dealing with a lot of numbers today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see. As always, that MAC opener will loom on December 20th, but before that, the next action for women's basketball team is going to be December 3rd, this Wednesday at 7 p.m. when they host Kentucky State. As always, BG Falcon Media Sports Network in particular, will have coverage of that written on bgfalconmedia.com. We'll have a broadcast as well in one of the two studios of Falcon Radio or WBGU 88.1 FM. So check that out as well, and check out BG_FMSN on Twitter X, where we will keep you posted with recaps, other written content, as well as links for those broadcasts as well. We are in the second hour of the Zig Zone here, and we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've still got men's basketball and hockey to get into, so don't go anywhere because you're listening to the Zig Zone here on WBGU 88.1 FM.
You are listening to Falcon Media Sports Network coverage on WBGU 88.1 FM in Bowling Green, Ohio.
Ever heard of Falcon Media Sports Network's broadcasts on Falcon Radio or WBGU 88.1 FM but don't know where to listen? Well, set down the radio, pick up your phone, and go to bgfalconmedia.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to stream Falcon Radio and WBGU 88.1 FM for all broadcasts.
You are listening to Falcon Media Sports Network coverage on WBGU 88.1 FM in Bowling Green, Ohio.
Welcome back here to the Zig Zone, Falcon Media Sports Network's flagship show, taking you through everything going on in the world of Bowling Green athletics. I'm Holden Ruck, your host once again from Falcon Media Sports Network, joined as I have been by Ben Korak and Artie Abrego, who are really probably wearing down the chairs at this point. They've been here a while today, so. But we're going to get right into talking about the men's basketball team. And Artie, why don't you just take me through the last week? What's been going on with the men's basketball team?
Well, they took a trip out to Fort Myers in Florida for the Fort Myers tip-off, and they came in with 2 wins in that sort of tournament. I have no idea how you win that tournament. It was not clear. Me and Foster Rosti, we researched heavily how exactly you would win this.
Was it just like an invitational?
I think it was just an invitational. I think we were thinking too heavily of it, but they picked up a 71-66 win against Bucknell, and then 81-48 dominating win against VMI, which was, frankly, I think VMI was probably the worst opponent they played.
What does VMI
what
does it stand for?
I think it's a...
We'll fact check it, but keep going, Artie.
Virginia Military Institute.
Virginia Military Institute.
I was asking that just to see if anybody knew.
Yeah, it's on their logo.
I didn't know that was a thing.
If you could zoom in on their text, yeah, but that was definitely one of the worst teams they played all season long versus VMI. They couldn't shoot, they couldn't rebound, they can't really do much, and they lost by quite a few to BG. But so picked up 2 wins after dropping 2 in a row to Davidson and then William and Mary. So they're back at 5-2 on the year. One of their best starts since, I believe, 2020, 2021. Definitely
good to start off hot. I am a big proponent of, except for when you, let me restart. When you are a college football team and you're a title contender, a national title contender, and you play other national title contenders at the start of the year, I get those. Ben and I were talking about this before. I understand those kinds of games. In a lot of other sports, I don't care nearly as much about the non-conference because, especially depending on the program, if you're a MAC school, you're not thinking about the national title generally. You're thinking about winning your tournament and making the NCAA tournament or, a bowl game, whatever it may be. But I do think it is nice to carry some momentum here, regardless of who you're beating, even if Bucknell and VMI aren't, premier competition. Good to get a couple of wins, get back in the win column. And in particular, you look at the Bucknell game, season high 11 3-pointers for the Falcons. Yeah, really solid metric there. Yeah, hit 11 3-pointers. That was they hit 8 total between Davidson and William Mary, so that was a pretty good stretch for the team just to get 11 threes out in one game. Should mention one big thing that happened in that tournament was Javon Ruffin actually started in place of Josiah Shackelford. Shackelford still played. He was just on the bench for that game, so sort of changed up the starting lineup for those 2 games. And so you got the more experienced Ruffin in the starting lineup instead of Shackelford, who's a sophomore, and it seemed to work out well. Yeah, really good efficiency too. Not Not that the women's basketball team has been, completely inefficient and just chucking shots. I'm not saying that, certainly. But shooting at a tick of 46.7% from the field in the Bucknell game, and then in the VMI game, you shoot 46.9. So, I mean, almost the same tick there, and, more in line with, the kind of efficiency you want to see from a teams that came into the season with, I would argue, kind of similar places in their conference, similar aspirations. You made the tournament, didn't really get anything done. You still got a lot to prove and want to get back there and compete, at least win a game, certainly. Both coaches in the third year. So, you're kind of feeling that, okay, this is where they start to put it together, start to figure it out. Even against a worse defense, you do like to see the efficiency there. Couple of challenges coming up here too. Kansas State, that's a power school. Utah Valley and Aquinas College. Chicago State will be those 4 games, 3 of which are at home before conference play. Where's your confidence level in this team? I think it's really hard to evaluate them without looking in the rear view at last year and the injury marred season. I mean, it's kind of hard to get through the critical analysis of that team too. I mean, where's your comfort level with them right now? What are your concerns, Artie?
Firstly, just to mention the Kansas State game, playing for the first time ever, and guess who they're facing off against in when they travel out there? Marcus Johnson. Marcus Johnson. So they will be facing off against Marcus Johnson. I don't know how much he'll play. That should be clear, but they are moved facing Marcus Johnson. So
I am also sorry to burst everybody's bubble about this. The only real starter that played with Marcus Johnson is Javonte Campbell. Like, most of the team is gone also.
Oh, yeah. No, most of that team transferred out.
A lot of the influential team is gone.
If you want to count Sam Towns as a starter from last year, I mean, he only played 6 games, but like I wouldn't really say he's a starter. But Wilkins Jr. exact transferred, Jemai Felt transferred to Temple. So like all those guys,
Justin Thomas, Troy Glover, Javon Ruffin, Josiah Shackelford, Mayor Wool.
I mean, that's the name of the game now with mid-majors, because you have to rebuild through the portal every year. So it's like one of those unfortunate things.
It's cool, but it's also like 4 out of the 5 guys on the floor at any given time are going to be like, why is this like who is this guy? Well, I mean, I think it just adds a little bit of depth to talk about, considering that there was so much turnover from last year to this year that like. The only guy that can really go over and say hi to a guy that he played with consistently throughout the season is Javonte Campbell.
I mean, he was on the team with Sam, so I guess you could say that.
Yeah, but they only played 6 games.
Pardon was also on the team. Spurgeon was also on the team. So I mean, he could say like, there's a couple of guys.
Noted playing time.
Yeah.
How many of those guys did we talk about in the Zig Zone? We really only talked about Javonte and some Sam Towns, but mostly we talked about him because
he's still playing off against like virtually the same coaching staff, minus Greg Silovich, who left.
It's something. It's just like you're not.
I just think another player coming back. That's just what I wanted to mention, just so people would know. Like
reeling it in a little bit, I do appreciate it. I think it's a cool connection. Being the bearer of worse news, arguably, as far as I can see, he hasn't registered a minute.
No,
in
he has been. That's why I said I don't know how much he'll play. I doubt he'll play any.
I would imagine if they're scheduling this game, he's going to play. I mean,
he's going to get his first minute.
I would hope that he would play some. Just because former team.
Yeah.
And just to get him on the same floor.
This is just an area where it's admittedly like a gap in my knowledge, but I do have to wonder. You look at the transfer portal, greener grass, chance to compete. There's plenty of reasons why a guy transfers to one school or another. Transferring when you're like one of the primary options on a team to a school where you're not playing is really, really interesting to me.
I feel like it's partially opportunity, and then like you're just trying to chase the NIL deals too. That's part of the thing.
Yeah, let's not get into an argument.
No, certainly not.
But to answer your earlier question, Holden, just the strengths and weaknesses, was it right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, strength-wise, they're a much better like shooting from. Like their shooting percentage is much higher. They're shooting 47.3% from the field. I would say they're not really great at 3-point shooting yet. They still struggle a lot in that category. They don't really they added guys who can shoot like Javon Ruffin, Josiah Shackelford. We haven't seen that from them consistently enough to say like this is a great shooting team. I would say they're pretty good at obviously steals. Like you look at that, like 90 steals, that's most in the country in the NCAA. So I would say defensively, they're a really good defensive team most of the time. And then they have guys who can, steal the basketball. Javonte Campbell, obviously. Justin Thomas, he does a great job with that. Meyer Wall can get those steals too. Weaknesses, I would say, again, three-point shooting. They're not very consistent at three-point shooting. You've seen multiple times where they just get completely cold and can't hit it from beyond the arc. I would also say, just in general, I feel like a lot of times,
I don't know how much there is weaknesses, but
Yeah.
I don't know how many strengths there are either, because almost everything that I've seen so far has been just inconsistent. Besides it's just been the scoring's been relatively inconsistent. Defense and individual performances in the defense have been inconsistent.
Well,
the
I would
steals
say-
numbers have been there the whole time, which is something to hang your hat on, especially. But that is when you look at the defense as a whole, you can have great defense without any steals at all.
Yeah.
So
I would
if you're
say,
just shutting down points, that's more valuable than allowing points and getting steals, I would say. So I don't know that through the certain amount of the season, myself personally could really say like this has been a great strength or this has been a great weakness.
Okay.
which I think there's value to that, because you there hasn't been a glaring weakness to the team. I would even say 3-point shooting hasn't been great, but it hasn't really been bad. It hasn't been losing you games. So I mean, yeah, you could argue either way. I just don't feel like either way there's anything glaring. It's just kind of they've done what they probably should do, and there's certainly room for improvement, and you would definitely hope that they would do so in a lot of aspects.
I'm going to disagree a tad, but I agree with most of what you said. I would say that in terms of like perimeter defending and just like defending in general, the guards have been fantastic. Javonte Campbell, Justin Thomas, Shackford has been pretty good too. Javon Ruffin is a pretty good defender as well. It's more where the forwards I'm more concerned, especially when they play teams that are more small ball, like Davidson. They really struggled at defending the three because they were spacing the floor so much against the forwards that Towns and Glover really couldn't get any rebounds or like really couldn't make a presence in the paint. So if you run up a team like that again, that's where I'm sort of concerned about. Sam Towns has been obviously, he's been here forever. I'd say like he's coming off probably his best game of the season against VMI at 16 rebounds. So it seems he's figuring out a little bit more. But then again, VMI wasn't a great team in general. I don't know how much you can say that, like that was the cause of like how he was playing. Troy Glover II is who I'm really concerned about because it doesn't feel like he has much of a presence so far this season in terms of inside scoring and rebounding. Like if you look at his rebounding numbers, his high on the season is 5 rebounds against VMI. Before that game, he was getting 4-3. He went through Davidson with 0 rebounds. Granted, he only played a couple of minutes. He only played 13 minutes that game. So I'm a little more concerned about him in the starting lineup than I am the other players. But I would say like most of that lineup is pretty consistent, especially points coming off the bench with Meyer Wall. So they are like it's difficult to like nail down like this team is great at that when they really haven't played teams with like massive amount of competition yet.
That's my point.
Yeah.
It's just like there's been times where almost every facet of the game has been good. There's been times where almost every facet of the game has lacked.
I mean, when they find out that consistency, like I think they'll be great. It just doesn't matter, like you said,
if they can find it. Yeah.
I would look for Kansas State because this is gonna be probably one of their toughest opponents all year long. So I would look to see how they would do there.
We can argue this until the Calcs come home as well, and whether or not you should have a stronger non-conference schedule as Bowling Green as a mid-major or a weaker. I do think this is a pretty weak schedule because I think when you finish non-conference play, the 2 most difficult teams you might play are Dayton and Michigan State, and both of them were exhibition, which is nice that you played them and you're getting wins, which is good. Certainly for confidence, and there's a couple of good teams, but just, women's basketball teams playing very difficult opponents and maybe learning some things because of it, and in some cases maybe not. But, you can just argue about whether or not you'd want the non-conference schedule to be more difficult, considering Kansas State is a good team, not a great team, and that's by far your most difficult, I'd say.
Well,
maybe Davidson.
I mean, there's arguably.
I would say Davidson was a pretty decent team. Not great, but like decent and like enough.
And you
to
did
like
play tight with them.
Yeah, and especially down the stretch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it depends. Like, I think this team has enough talent where I'm not completely worried. I would see like, okay, how are they going to do against Kansas State? Like that is where I would look at to see how this team does against like really high level competition.
It just is nice when you go into MAC play saying like, okay, now we're maybe a step down in quality of play.
Yeah,
even though the play gets more beneficial. than going from Utah Valley and Aquinas College. Is Utah Valley where Todd Simon coached before?
No, that was
Southern Mississippi.
No,
Or no?
Southern Utah State.
We're gonna have to Google this.
Fact check.
Yeah, Southern Utah State or
Independent
something.
fact
It was
checkers are
something Utah,
confirming.
correct? I believe it was something Utah.
We are going to Wikipedia.
Yeah. But Utah, it doesn't really matter. Utah Valley, Aquinas College, and then Chicago State, and then you go into Ohio, who's probably
Southern Utah Thunderbirds.
Yeah, Southern Utah.
You're going into MAC play, who's a higher quality team than the last 3 opponents you've played. So
Yeah.
I just don't know how, as a mid-major team, feeling about that over, maybe having an overly difficult non-conference schedule, and you kind of take the weight off of your bat a bit, and you're swinging a bit lighter when you get into play that actually matters.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a team that the Dayton game's one thing, it took a pretty big L there. The Michigan State exhibition, you played pretty close with, a Michigan State team. I don't think there's anything to walk out of that feeling too negative about. And so when you're having those kinds of games and you're getting big wins like 120-65 over Bethany College, you beat Texas State pretty badly, 83-48. When I'm looking, and you played close in your 2 losses to Davidson and William & Mary, 14 points with Davidson, not the worst in the world. 74-82, 8 points there. Not the biggest margins in the world to lose by. So to me, when you're going into the rest of this non-conference, maybe sans the Kansas State game, I think it's pretty imperative. Utah Valley, Aquinas College, Chicago State, you got to take care of business. Again, they don't matter. Conference record is what you're caring about for looking towards the tournament. But not only for momentum, but just like, if we're being realistic about the team, this is a team that, correct me where you disagree, Artie, should probably be winning those 3 games.
Yeah, I would agree. Can't say they play Utah Valley, Aquinas College, and Chicago State. They should probably win all 3 of those games past Kansas State. And then you have Ohio at the Convention Center on December 20th. The MAC season starts. Sorry, I keep confusing that for some reason. But yeah,
I don't know much about any of the 3 teams, but just on name, it feels like
Aquinas College. BG just dominated last season. They scored 100 points against them, so it's a repeat game.
I just can't imagine Utah Valley and Chicago State would be able to compete highly, or should be able to compete highly against a MAC team, no matter where the MAC team is.
For reference, Chicago State is currently 0-8.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that should be a win.
That one should be a win.
That should
Aquinas
be a win.
College, that's a team you, like you said, you kind of crushed last season. You kind of expect about the same or similar. Utah Valley is 5-2.
So possibly a little higher level competition, but they played
their losses coming against Fresno State and Boise State. So, decent programs. They haven't really beaten anybody astonishing. South Dakota State, Samford, UC Irvine.
They could possibly be on like the same level as BG, possibly, but maybe I would say BG should still pick up the win against them.
So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at right now with this team. Is I'm not gonna say bad teams, but there's worse teams in front of you, and there's a better team in front of you. Arguably, you should take care of the worst ones. And if you come into MAC play with more than 2 losses over these next 4 games, I'm going to be a bit skeptical about how MAC play is going to go down. I think the fortunate thing here, as compared with the women's team, I don't think you have question marks over who your main contributors are. I think they just have some things they need to figure out on like kind of personal game levels for the most part. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, they have a pretty solid like. Could you repeat your question?
I feel like there's less questions about who's going to step up and contribute, and more just questions about how can they establish their consistency.
Oh yeah, you've seen who's contributed this season: Meyer Wall, Javante Campbell, Giles Shackelford, Sam Towns. So they have a ton of talent from top to bottom, just in terms of who's coming off the bench and then who's starting. So yeah, I think there's less questions specifically because we're knock on wood, obviously we're dealing with less injuries than we were at last point during this point of the season, where it feels like guys like Yusuf Kayat and we're out with an injury. Sam Towns was out with an injury by now at this point in the season. So we're dealing with they're dealing with a lot less of that. So we know who the players are or are going to be good. And yeah, just once they find that defensive and offensive consistency, I feel like they can be very good, or just better than they are currently now than their record stands.
If Do you think that's, I mean, just like the big thing for them defensively? I mean, shooting efficiency. If you have to isolate the one thing you want to see them fix before conference play the most, what would that pick be for you?
That's tough. I would say I feel like that 2-game stretch against Davidson William Mary where they were really shooting poorly from the 3 and from the field, but also from just free throws. They shot 68% from the line.
Nothing boils my blood like being inefficient at the free throw line.
Yeah, so I feel like shooting efficiency is a big thing because that's where I feel like they've been most inconsistent, either from the line or from beyond the arc. So I would say like shooting consistency in general. I would like to see them get that fixed. So because if they're going to keep taking those shots, a lot of the time you want at least like you did against Buckner, you want at least 11 of those to land, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right on the money, and you start to get that 3-point game up, and I think a couple of these wins, that are maybe closer scores, 71-66, start to look a little less close potentially. I really do think there's so much potential with this team, but they just have to iron out some kinks, and I think if they're able to, figure some things out with a majority homestand, obviously they're going to go on the road to face Kansas State, but then a homestand for Utah Valley, Aquinas College, and Chicago State. I think they're going to be in really good shape going into MAC play if they can, kind of figure out and address the issues that I'm sure they know they have as a team in those coming games. And I mean, we've talked about it plenty on a variety of different platforms. Foster talked about it last week. This coaching staff, top to bottom, not just Todd Simon, but coaches like Stacy and Tums. I mean, you've got a ton of guys who have been there, played a ton of different basketball. Just the amount of experience with them. I don't have any doubts that they're gonna figure out how to right the ship here. And I think this roster, top to bottom, with what Todd Simon has done in the portal, is too talented to not figure things out. I don't even want to say right the ship because I mean they're in a good place. They're 5-2. Maybe not the strongest non-conference, but I think they're looking pretty strong going into MAC play. Anything else, Artie, to offer on that?
No, I think I would say that's probably correct. I would say just coaching staff wise, I definitely agree with Foster and you. And just the amount of just depth and like knowledge that coaching staff has is definitely going to help out a lot of these players, specifically younger guys like Mekhi Leach who are getting minutes in like as a freshman. That's definitely going to help them a lot is if they continue to get minutes during MAC play. Because I mean, obviously with Leach it's tougher because you don't really know because he's a freshman. Same with Camden Carroll, but hopefully like that knowledge really rubs off on the younger guys if they stick around.
Yeah. I think that's going to wrap us up here for men's basketball talk. The team will get back to action tomorrow, December 1st. It's crazy that tomorrow is December already. But that'll be an 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tip-off in Manhattan, Kansas, the Bramlage Coliseum. It's a cool name, the Coliseum, for any venue. But they'll take on Kansas State tomorrow night. As always, Falcon Media Sports Network will have our usual coverage of it. Check out bgfalconmedia.com and at BG_FMSN, all on Twitter X for more regarding that content. We're going to go ahead and move on. We've got one more sport that BG has been heavily active in to talk about, and it is the hockey ice. And pretty good weekend, I would say, Ben.
Yeah, not bad at all. They had their second non-conference series of the season, their final one that's going to be played, both games in the same location. It's their only one that they're going to play both at home. It's Princeton that they played, an ECAC team, which is, for anybody that's not well versed in college hockey, ECAC, East Coast Athletic Conference, or East Collegiate Athletic Conference, I believe, is the pretty much the equivalent of the Ivy League. It's Princeton, Dartmouth, Colgate, Harvard, St. Lawrence is in there, a couple other teams, Rensselaer, Polytechnic Institutes, and their RPI. So there's a bunch of solid teams in there, not a lot of great teams in Bowling Green. Should have got 2 wins this weekend, and they did do so, 4-1 in the first game in the slate. And in the second game, a much tighter one, a much less well-played game. But they still were able to come away with a win, 4-3, which is a confidence builder to not play your best hockey and still be able to come away with a win. That's what great teams do, especially in hockey. And now in 6 out of the last 7 games for Bowling Green hockey, they have taken a win or just more points than their opponents, and they've only had 1 game since the start of conference play since they haven't taken a point, and that was their last game played in conference against St. Thomas, who's a very good team. So the team's doing well. They're very confident in their abilities. The head coach Dennis Williams is a very happy man, which is a good thing to see. And a nice weekend this weekend and an easy weekend next weekend to reset before you get the turn of the year and a much more difficult back end schedule.
Yeah, and I think one of the only things that could have made this weekend feel a lot better would have been if it was a conference game and you were adding those points. But at the end of the the end of the day, you take the weekend going the way you're expecting it to, beating the team that you're supposed to. I really, something that has been really exciting to me about this team is just the offensive impact of the newcomers. Specifically, like Tyler Hodson and Noah Morneau. Morneau, 7 goals, 5 assists on the year. Tyler Hodson, 5 goals and 7 assists. Hodson also scoring one of those goals in each of the 2 nights against Princeton. I mean, Tyler Hodson, the RPI transfer, junior. Noah Morneau, a freshman. Big, is this kind of how you expected this team to look offensively, Ben? Or, how much is this coming as a surprise to you?
I mean, it was going to have to be because there were so many newcomers and just the type of newcomer that Dennis Williams is going to bring in. He was hired in, I think, late May or early June of 2024, and didn't really get a whole lot of time to really recruit and bring in people from the transfer portal. So he kind of rode with what the team was, and that was a Ty Eigner setup team where it was very defensive, very possession oriented, and much more. The most of the team was play away from the puck kind of people. But now you've got a team that head coach Dennis Williams has got out and he's got scores. Noah Morneau, that's what he is. He's a point per game scorer at his last stop in Windsor in the Ontario Hockey League. Tyler Hodson, back-to-back 20-point seasons with RPI, and then he transferred to Bowling Green. He's got 12 already and on pace to break his 20-point marks last 2 years. Dom Ryman is over a point per game scored in his 4-year career at Everett, where Williams had coached Dom Ryman before as a forward with the Silvertips. Breck McKinley's come into his own as a scorer. Ben Duran's come into his own in the last couple games. Braden Crampton's a point per game defenseman for Spokane in the WHL, and he's a freshman defenseman that's going to be good for the next couple of years for the Falcons. So to answer your question, I think it was staring you right in the face that a lot of the goals were going to be coming from newcomers. You didn't know who exactly because there was too many names. You didn't know who was going to adapt to college hockey easy. A lot of people knew Dom Ryman was going to be great. Not a lot of people had Noah Morneau on their radar. A lot of people had Tyler Hodson, knowing that he was going to be a big transfer. So yes and no. And I think it's not surprising at all that a lot of the scoring's coming from newcomers, and they're playing like they're not newcomers. They're playing like they're, they've been around the block a couple of times here in Bowling Green. So it's nice to see. It's great to see a mesh of returners and newcomers, and the team really coming together as we get into the meat of conference play after December and into January 26th.
And so as we're, looking at, the development of this team, looking into conference play, I do want to turn over our attention to the CCHA standings, where most of the teams have played 10 games, save for a couple. Augustana with 9, St. Thomas with 7, Ferris State and Northern Michigan have played 8. But of the 5 teams who have played the 10, Bowling Green, currently 3rd overall in the conference, solid place to be in. I think Bemidji, has really started to come into their own, especially compared to last year. And you've spoken to that as well, that, this is a team that's, pretty serious and, was competitive last year, I think, in a lot of ways as well. Minnesota State currently in that top mark with 24 points compared to Bemidji's 23, Bowling Green's 19. So, definitely good to be in the thick of it at the top. It's early enough that, I wouldn't be sweating for Bowling Green if they weren't. But I think you really like where you're at right now, having played, several of these really good opponents already. Yeah,
the biggest thing to see, I think, for Bowling Green, we've talked so much the last couple of years about just not the scoring, not going exactly where you want to go. In conference play, Bowling Green's got the most goals for. And not one of the better defenses, but they've had some weird matches that have got very high scoring very quickly. So it's nice to see the Falcons leading the conference and goals for in conference play. They're also leading. They're the second highest scoring team overall. St. Thomas has 52 goals scored on the season. Bowling Green's got 47, and Bemidji State's got 60. But the Falcons still up in that realm as well. It's just nice to see Bowling Green relying on offense, because in every sport, defense is mostly effort. And a lot of things have to fall your way here and there, and you've got goalies that are still trying to settle in and trying to work their way to being the guy if Bowling Green is going to have a true guy this year. So, I think it's a good combination. A lot still ahead, a lot of growth still for this team. They haven't reached their peak yet, I guarantee you that. And it's nice to see them up with the likes of Minnesota State and St. Thomas and Michigan Tech and Bemidji so earlier in the season, so they don't have to
Play
chase.
catch up.
Yeah, because that's a problem when you have Bemidji State, who has your number, and St. Thomas and Michigan Tech, who are both rivals in the CCHA before St. Thomas leaves after this season. So you got to stay at the top. You got to continue to take points. If you take 3 points at least in every series, you're going to be golden from here on out. And you just got to make sure you take points, because you're going to take the majority of points against the bottom three teams in Lake State, Ferris State, and Northern Michigan. They're just pretty poor and clearly a worse team. So there's a divide there. Those are points that you should be guaranteed to take, and you just got to handle business against the top teams.
I mean, Ben, you probably know more than me, but like when you say their peak, like what stuff do you think they need to clean up, heading to the later aspects of the season, like as we get into more of the CCHA play as we go along?
Yeah, it's tough after this weekend because my inclination is to say defense, but Gustav Stjernberg's been out for a couple of weeks now with a right hand injury. He missed all of St. Thomas, I believe, and he missed both games against Princeton as well. So Bowling Green was playing some defensemen that might have not seen the ice had Goose not had his injury, and those mainly are Jack Blake, who skated extra last night in the Game 2 victory, and then in the Game 1 victory he did not skate, but Richard Simonovic, who was a transfer from Miami, has been burned a couple of times. He seems like the guy that's come out of the lineup for Bowling Green and kind of been the guy to be scratched if they have to scratch a defenseman. So I think if Stjernberg's able to come back and stay in the lineup for a long period of time and settle into duos that won't change, because the duos between the defensemen have changed a lot, I think that's going to work wonders for this team. And being able to play, like Gustav Stjernberg and Dalton Norris did last year, play with a guy for almost the entire season. You learn each other's tendencies, what they tend to do, your scoring benefits because of that. I think that's very powerful, and I think when Goose comes back, that's going to be something to look for, and putting him with his whoever his partner is going to be the rest of the season. I do think all around they have more talent than last year, but if they're able to take the talent that they have and play like they did last season with the grit and how they played and how they executed head coach Dennis Williams' game plan, I think they'll be in great shape and maybe be able to make a run at the Mason Cup at the end of the year.
I think it's also kind of a convenient time to be, hoping to usher a guy back from injury. Looking ahead on the schedule, the conference games ahead is as soft of a stretch as you can have. It's kind of spread out because of the...
That's bad, actually. I'm not going to lie.
You think? Well, I'm saying as far as having a guy not be available right now, you're having him not available during games like your series against the three worst teams in the CCHA right now.
Oh, yeah, you just won 2 games without your best defenseman on the ice. And you
what I'm saying. I mean,
you played pretty even with St. Thomas without your best defenseman on the ice.
And you look at Northern Michigan, that's probably 6 points.
That's 6 points.
You look
it's a poor weekend if you don't.
If
you don't take 6.
There's like the development team game and the Slater. That's
doesn't
whatever.
matter.
Ohio State series out of conference. Want to compete, but it's not CCHA. Then you go to Ferris State January 9th and 10th.
Should
Lake
be at
Superior
least
State,
4 points.
Lake Superior State 16th and 17th.
Should be at least 5-6 points.
So that's what I'm saying. You're looking to take the majority of points here. Your next top team that you're playing is at Bemidji January 23rd, January 24th. That's going to be a tough one.
It's tough.
Obviously.
Yeah, it's a tough place to get to. It's kind of an awkward flight then drive situation, or an insanely long drive to get to Bemidji, Minnesota, which I don't even know if anybody that hasn't been there knows where Bemidji, Minnesota is. To be honest, if you gave me a map, I don't even know if I could tell you where Bemidji, Minnesota is. You look for Lake Bemidji, I guess, but that's a tough one. And you're right, St. Thomas after that, Augustana after that, the only time you play them this year, I believe, and then Minnesota State and Michigan Tech. You end with the top 4 teams.
So that's what I'm saying, though.
So and that's my point in saying that, like, having the easy stretch upcoming is bad, in my opinion, because if you fall into a spell where you're not playing that great, or like I mentioned with men's basketball, you play teams that are, a bit easier, and then you go to teams that are hard. You just forget how to play against.
Right.
You forget not how to play up because they're just as talented as a lot of teams they're playing, but you forget how to compete to the same level because you don't have to against a team in Lake State that you're clearly superior, and Ferris State, who you're clearly superior, and Northern Michigan, who they're 0 for the season.
So here's my point of contention there. You've got those non-conference series against Notre Dame and Ohio State before Notre Dame's after Bemidji, but Bemidji is the only, if we're being kind of objective here, the only good CCHA team you're playing before Notre Dame
until February
is Bemidji.
Yeah.
And so while you don't want to get complacent, playing down to teams or, skating by and not playing at your best, you're not playing, you're playing two really good programs in Ohio State and Notre Dame, but you have the added benefit that those aren't losing to them, which, they might get all the points, I don't know, they could go overtime. They're going to be favored. Ohio State and Notre Dame are going to be favored against Bowling Green in both those series. But,
and they should win. Those two teams should probably sweep.
Right. If they don't, fine, that's gravy, but you're not getting points for it. But my point is, you're going to be tested by good teams without the risk of falling behind in conference. And so that's why I think, you're waiting on a guy to come back from injury. You're not playing your high-stakes games, really, for, another month and a half yet. I don't know what his timetable is, certainly. But at the end of the day, I think... I don't think you risk falling complacent with that stretch of those non-conference series.
It's pretty clear they need this stretch, and they need the break for Christmas to reset, get everybody healthy, just be able to skate for a little bit and not have to compete, which is, something we don't talk about a lot is just the constant competition does wear on you after a while. Right. So it's nice to have this break and heading into a long second half of the year. You do kind of wish, I love having very difficult non-conference opponents, and I love that Ohio State and Notre Dame are scheduled the back half, but that makes it so difficult because you pretty much don't have an off week aside from your bye until the end of the season. So that's, you play Michigan Tech the end of the season, Minnesota State the week before that, Augustana the week before that, St. Thomas the week before that. The entire month of February, you're playing 4 weeks of the 4 toughest teams to play, arguably, and then the 2 end weeks of January you're playing Bemidji State and Notre Dame. You don't have a break. Lake State, you could argue it's a break, it's an easier team, but you still can't take your foot off the gas. You need to take 6 points. Ferris State the same, and the week before. So actually I didn't even realize you don't even have a bye week the second half of the schedule.
That's a pretty tall order.
So and again, don't get me wrong. They're going to take the vast majority of points against Northern Michigan, Ferris State, and Lake State, especially because 2 of those series are at home. But you get into that back half of the schedule, it's all systems go on January 23rd against Bemidji, and from then on, you
pedal to the metal.
Yeah, the puck's got to bounce the right way. You got to make the plays on it. That's just how it's got to be. That's when it gets down to it, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I think you're looking at 6 free points against Northern Michigan, so I'm really looking ahead to that kind of turn of the year to really start fleshing out more about this team. It would be genuinely a shock and a pretty negative omen, I think, if they don't take care of business against Northern Michigan. I think they're going to on Friday and Saturday. I'm not particularly pressed about that one.
Yeah, I think they feel the same way. Obviously, they're not going to play that way because head coach Dennis Willie's just not going to let them play like that.
No.
But I think that the feeling that they're never going to say is that they feel the same way. Northern Michigan just isn't good. They don't have a lot of talent. They might be able to squeak out a point if they force an overtime game. They were able to do so in their barn last year when Bowling Green went up to Marquette. But they're in the slate now. For against Bowling Green 2 years in a row. They're playing them right before Christmas break. Even if the Falcons are injured, they're going to be playing for 6 points. They're more than likely going to get 6 points toward the CCHA, which is much needed, trying to stay at top of it and in the quest for one of the top 4 hosting seeds in the CCHA quarterfinal in the Mason Cup come March.
Yeah, definitely kind of a tale of two halves at this point. The remaining season, about half of it left is going to be little softer, less conference implications, and that last stretch is going to be a slog, kind of starting with Bemidji and really not letting off the gas after that. You got a team you split with, St. Thomas, Augustana's competitive, Minnesota State's dominant, Michigan Tech. So yeah, I mean, it'll be telling, and I kind of like it when schedules play out like this, only because sometimes if a schedule is front loaded and a team just takes care of business, the back half of the season gets boring. The back half of the season is not going to be boring at all.
But also you don't want to play Northern Michigan, Fair State, Lake State right before you get into the playoffs, because you forget how to compete against playoff teams, which is also something to look into. Ideally you would have like a Minnesota State, then Northern Michigan, then a St. Thomas, then a Lake State. So you get to kind of bounce back and forth between a team that you're definitely better than and a team that you're even with, or you're trying to scrape up points against. Ideally, but the schedule doesn't work ideal, and that's just the way hockey goes. That's the way sports go, and you got to take care of business. And a lot of confidence is the aura around this team, and I think that's powerful going into the second half of the season.
Yeah, well, they'll certainly look to bolster that confidence this weekend. They'll take on Northern Michigan, the Wildcats, at the Slater Family Ice Arena on Friday and Saturday, 7:07 and 6:07 puck drops, respectively. As always, Ben with a color commentator that I'm not sure who will be on that call with you. Do you know yet?
I forget.
Okay.
Somebody will be. I believe Sean Connolly is going to be one, and Nathan Burkett or Dan Ridenauer will be on the other one.
A couple of our seasoned hockey veterans at this point will be on that call with Ben this weekend here on WBGU 88.1 FM, of course. As always, bgfalconmedia.com will have written recaps and other content related to that and all of the BG Athletics events going on. And you can check out BG_FMSN on Twitter X, as well as BG Falcon Media, wherever else you use social media. That wraps up our raw sports coverage for today's show. And I told you guys I was going to hold out to the end to kind of throw out a discussion topic. And the thing you do have to know, and that you probably already do know, is the way that I approach and think about most sports is like rooted in being a football guy. It's by far my favorite sport to watch. And some pretty shaking news came out, kind of an unprecedented move. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Ole Miss's Lane Kiffin accepting the job at Louisiana State University to be their next football coach, in a rare move where a team ranked in the top 10 that just outside of top ranked team just outside of contention for their title game and bound for the college football playoff. This 12-team playoff is now going to be proceeding into it without their head coach. So I kind of want to know your thought, because I feel as you guys follow mid-major schools, Bowling Green for hockey, basketball, football, etc. You look at a team like volleyball. Coach Daniela Tomic took a Power 4 job with Cincinnati this past season, paving the way for Alex Del Piombo to take over. But, those coaches, these are often stepping stones. I think we said it on one of these shows not long after Eddie George got in the building, like, nobody here is expecting him to coach here for 10 years. He might not coach here for, 4 years. That could be the reality.
We're hoping not.
We don't know. Realistically, if Bowling Green...
I should clarify that. We're hoping not because he does well.
Right.
And then leaves to go to a bigger school.
Right.
That's what I
mean. Mid-majors have been stepping stones.
Just the way you phrase that.
Nick Saban was the head coach at Toledo. Urban Meyer was the head coach at Bowling Green. They always have been, and, will kind of continue to be stepping stones. And that's okay. So my question to you, as a mid-major fan or as just a fan in general, you can put yourself in Ole Miss shoes if you want. How do you feel about the way that they handled it? Lane Kiffin made it clear that his hope was to, finish off his 6 years at Ole Miss by coaching out the title run, even though he was taking the LSU job, and Ole Miss brass said no way.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I see both sides. Like, I can see Kiffin's perspective, like, okay, I'm going to take this job, like letting them know up front, like, but I want to finish the season. So I understand that perspective. From Ole Miss perspective, I get, like, you probably don't want the head coach of your program talking about in interviews like, yeah, I'm going to take this job, or like I'm going to accept this, or whatever. Like, even though he probably didn't outright say that. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the situation, but at the same time, it's like, I kind of get it, but at the same time, I don't think, like, it's a weird situation, because, like, you're trying to think of it like a normal job, but at the same time, it's like a college football job that comes with all the media and the press, and like everyone's watching you as you sort of accept it. So that's kind of how I view it. I don't know if that made any sense at all.
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Ben?
Yeah, I think, It's difficult because, like, if he knows he's going to take the job, to keep that a secret and away from fans is a disservice to Ole Miss fans as well as LSU fans. But on the other hand, like, I would have rather him had a sneaky conversation with LSU, struck up a deal, and not even told Ole Miss about it, and then coached through the college football playoff.
I guess he was trying to be upfront about it. I don't know.
Which I understand,
yeah.
and now it backfired because he doesn't get to coach in the college football playoff.
Right.
And it backfired for him.
He's taking the job at LSU against the job at Ole Miss, so he's made his choice.
Yeah.
So in that case, I don't feel bad because
I'm not saying
he's
that,
made his choice.
I'm not
and
saying
Ole
I
Miss gets
feel
to do what
bad
they
for
want.
Lane Kiffin in this scenario, but consider this. You know, if you're the athletic director or president, you know, the powers that be at Ole Miss, right now you're saying that because a guy is taking a job with probably resources, more money, and like, yeah, I get it, he's not staying, and that's got to be tough. That's frustrating. But you're willing to give up on. Is this the first? I think it was the first 11-win season in program history for Ole Miss.
Yes.
Sounds right.
So you've got a coach. He's leaving you. He's led you to your best season in program history after a really strong season last year too. I mean, this is a team that could still. Do I think they're the favorite? Do I think they were going to win the title if Lane Kiffin stayed? No, I don't personally. But you're basically saying we don't care about taking a chance at it. They're not going to win with an interim staff.
And there's things that we don't like. Maybe they do feel confident in interim, which is a huge stretch in my opinion, and you should not be banking on that.
I mean, to switch that up like right before the playoff.
Also, I recall back to the playoffs last year. The Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson takes a job before he coaches the playoff game with the Lions, and maybe as a Lions fan myself, maybe because he was taking interviews all week, he didn't prepare like he could have, and the Lions got smoked because their offense wasn't good. So, and like, it is, if they don't believe that Lane Kiffin's going to bring his A game to the college football playoff because he's having to work on recruiting for LSU, then I don't see why. You know, I would see why you keep him around. If you don't feel like he's bringing A game, if you feel like his mind's going to be on the purple and gold instead of the Rebels, then I completely understand it. Yeah. And he's got to put on. He's made a choice against Ole Miss, and then he's going to go out in the college football playoff and put on Ole Miss letters again. Like I don't know how I'd feel about that either. And I'm sure it was not just an AD decision. I'm sure it was a large group decision by the staff at Ole Miss, and I guess who's to say that it's wrong? From a winning standpoint, it sucks for Ole Miss fans, but he made a choice and it wasn't you. So
eliminating the last year of volleyball from your brain, Ben. If Daniela Tomic took the Cincinnati job before the NIVC, but wanted to coach the NIVC still, would you have wanted her to?
I mean, they had just made like the MAC tournament championship, so like she at least almost accomplished her goal, right? Like
you're talking before the NIVC.
Yeah, so I'm saying, suppose I don't remember exactly when she took the Cincy job, but I know it was after the tournament run. Suppose that she takes that job before then.
I do think I would want her to stay, but I do think it's a far different situation
because how long she was there and that she already kind of accomplished the goal
because
having
of
a MAC
that
title. Okay,
because of that. Also because she had before the NIVC run, she had more successful seasons with Bowling Green. So, because of that, and I don't know how much of her getting the job at Cincinnati was because of the NIVC, which is a completely different argument and the stakes that you have just presented before me.
Right.
I don't think I would have wanted her to leave. But I would also feel awkward about seeing her wearing the orange and brown, knowing that she's already made a decision against the orange and brown.
So what about,
even if it's not a personal one?
Yeah.
So then, pivoting back, just kind of fleshing out the thought experiment. What about Scott Loeffler? If he decides he's taking an NFL job, which I mean, God knows that doesn't happen until the timing's a little off on that hypothetical, granted.
Yeah.
But if you know that he's leaving for another job that's not the Bowling Green head football coach, would you still want him to coach in the bowl game?
If he was leaving to coach another university, I would say no. I would say I would rather. I would rather an interim.
But
if he's going to the NFL, it's different because he's not choosing another college.
And I do think it gets hairy because LSU and
if
the SEC.
If he was, let's say Western Kentucky, because fellow Bowling Green, if he was leaving Bowling Green to go to Western Kentucky, I'd say no, you can't coach the bowl game.
Fair enough.
To be honest, for
Also
me,
because-
it just the timing is important too, because it's like right before the playoff. It's right before all these things are happening. Like,
And again,
I think
why-
Ben mentioned who say his mind is even in is he even thinking about it right now? Like, is he thinking more about the money? Like, how he's going to prepare for his next
he's
job?
already
Who's going to
coached
hire?
games.
Yeah,
He's already coached games of the season while most likely taking interviews with LSU.
right. Yeah,
Like, in my mind, that is also wrong. You're still at your previous, like, you still have a job to do, and a job that's probably upwards of 100 hours a week. So how much time are you taking away from Ole Miss because you're putting time into LSU?
So here's one more thing I want you to consider. The Ohio Bobcats dominated Miami in the MAC championship last year and then proceeded to win their bowl game. And Tim Albin got hired by Charlotte the same day as the MAC championship. So
Yeah.
what in that, it's a different level of football than the SEC, don't get me wrong. But like in that regard, like looking towards your future, working towards other jobs, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not prepared.
I agree. And it's all on feeling as well.
Yeah.
Because maybe Ole Miss had a feeling in their meetings with Lane Kiffin. They felt like he was checked
He was already
out of
out the door.
Yeah.
Which I find hard to believe from a very successful college football coach that he'd be checked out of the college football playoff.
And I also think too that the fact that he clearly, and I mean, his statement, he expressed that, he told them like, hey, I am taking this job. I still want to, be there for this team to try to get to the finish line here, which, I mean, how much you buy into that, the politics of it all, that's a separate conversation entirely. I was surprised.
Yeah,
A lot of
it's a
these
little bit
times the
surprising.
coach says they're
Yeah.
taking the job for the postseason. If they're not competing for the conference title, they're like, okay, I'm out the door, interims take over and whatever. The fact that Kiffin expressed interest and desire to, coach those games and that the brass at Mississippi was still like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know
I
how
just-
much of that is like him saying that or like for public preference. That's like the same thing too.
Yeah,
But,
I
like,
wonder how much of that is because they don't want the public to perceive them as like, okay, this
Soft.
is fine that you chose
Right.
Yeah.
the Tigers over us.
Right.
Because at the end of it, they're not rivals.
No, they're not.
Are they?
Like
No,
rivals.
no, I don't think
Not
so.
direct
Here's my
rivals.
thing, though,
but
like-
still, it's an SEC school that you are competing against.
But
And also, I would be sore being the number 6 team in the nation and then still being your existing head coach is choosing another lower level SEC school that not
For
lower
more money.
level, but a less successful SEC school this year.
I mean,
than
this year, but this year only, and historically, I don't think the margin's very close. And it's also like, I don't think
But what if
if they
the-
were to let him coach, they're not setting an unheard of precedent. When a job at a school that's perceived as a better program with better boosters, more money, etc., a place where you're more likely to win, when those jobs open up, guys claim for them. If Ryan Day was out at Ohio State tomorrow, how many head coaches do you think would leave their job to be the head coach of the Buckeyes? Because I tell you what, it's probably a lot.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not
I
saying
agree.
that LSU is the Ohio State job. I think like Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan.
But if you were,
I mean,
who's Indiana's head coach?
Kurt Cignetti.
Kurt Cignetti. If you're Cignetti and Ryan Day's job opens up, do you leave Indiana to go to Ohio State?
Well, he's not leaving for Penn State, I don't think, so probably not. But
Then no. Which I think is a pretty solid.
right, but
comparison.
Lane Kiffin's 50. Kurt Cignetti's pretty old. Like he's on the older end of college coaches.
True.
It's his first stop.
But
He's been
also the
successful.
fact that
It's
he
like-
wouldn't even leave Indiana to go to his alma mater, to stay with a team that he's kind of brought up out of nothing into an undefeated team that's going to the college football playoff. Which I to be honest, Ole Miss has been relatively irrelevant,
Yeah.
and Kiffin's kind of brought him up. And now if I'm the Ole Miss brass, as you say, like now what do? Like we're out a head coach, the best head coach we've ever had, the most historic season we've ever
Champion
had.
11 wins.
Like.
I think,
And what if Lane Kiffin goes out with Ole Miss, loses the first round badly, and then you
yeah,
have
it's like, wow, we should have just
allowed
taken the
yourself
interims. No,
to
you're
look
right.
like
That's a
you
good
have
point.
no backbone, and you let the guy coach even though there's purple and gold in the back of his head instead of the light blue and red. And
Yeah, I guess it's just it's pending to see what the team does in the playoff. I just personally think as we close here that changing things drastically right before the playoff
It is odd.
sends the
It's an odd
message
choice.
that you're not preoccupied with this postseason, which you should be when it's the most wins you've ever had in the regular season in program history. That's kind of
that's a fair point.
my end of it.
I don't think there's a right answer.
No, I don't think so, but I will be interested to circle back on this.
It's a question with a lot of variables, honestly. It's like depending on time, place,
I did
people.
Preface it on purpose with
Yeah.
pretty unique situations.
Personally, I do respect Ole Miss's move there to stand on business with it, and because of that, I'll probably be rooting for them pretty highly in the college football playoff.
That'd be fun to see who they
just
draw
so that
on
they
it.
can go on without Lane Kiffin, because that'd be kind of cool. That's a cool story.
That'd be sick, yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us here, I think, on the Zig Zone. Ben Korek and Artie Abrego. I'm Holden Ruck. As always, you can check out Falcon Media Sports Network content on bgfalconmedia.com, as well as Twitter X at BG_FMSN. Check out BG Falcon Media on YouTube as well for rebroadcasts of our sports broadcasts and this show, and our highlight packages as well from sports. That's going to do it for us here from the Coolin Center studios. For Artie Abrego and Ben Korek, I'm Holden Ruck saying, Ziggy, have a good night.